The European Investment Bank is the European Union's non-profit long-term lending institution established in 1958 under the Treaty of Rome.As a policy-driven bank whose shareholders are the member states of the EU. The EIB uses its financing operations to bring about European integration and social cohesion. It should not be confused with the European Central Bank. The EIB is a publicly owned international financial institution and its shareholders are the EU member states. Thus the member states set the bank's broad policy goals and oversee the two independent decision-making bodies, the Board of Governors and the Board of Directors. It is the world's largest international public lending institution. In 2009, Caisse des Dépôts, Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, KfW, and European Investment Bank founded the Long-Term Investors Club. History. The European Investment Bank was founded in Brussels in 1958 when the Treaty of Rome came into force. It relocated to Luxembourg, its current headquarters, in 1968. By 1999, it had more than 1,000 staff members, a figure that had nearly doubled by 2012. When the EIB was founded in 1958, it had 66 employees. The EIB Group was formed in 2000, comprising the EIB and the European Investment Fund, the EU's venture capital arm that provides finances and guarantees for small and medium enterprises. The EIB is the EIF's majority shareholder, with 62% of the shares. In 2012, the EIB Institute was created, with the goal of promoting European initiatives for the common good in EU member states and candidate and potential candidate countries, as well as EFTA nations. The total subscribed capital of the bank was €232 billion in 2012. The capital of the EIB was virtually doubled between 2007 and 2009 in response to the crisis. The EU heads of government agreed to increase paid-in capital by €10 billion in June 2012, with implementation expected in early 2013. For the fiscal year 2011, EIB lent €61 billion in various loan products, bringing total outstanding loans to €395 billion, one-third higher than at the end of 2008. Nearly 90% of these were with EU member states, with the remainder dispersed between around 150 partner countries. The bank uses its AAA credit rating and funds itself by raising equivalent amounts on the capital markets. Mission. As the Bank of the European Union, the EIB's mission is to make a difference to the future of Europe and its partners by supporting sound investments which further EU policy goals. Although about 90% of projects financed by the EIB are based in EU member countries, the bank does fund projects in about 150 other countries, non-EU Southeastern European countries, Mediterranean partner countries, ACP countries, Asian and Latin American countries, the members of the Eastern Partnership, and Russia. According to the EIB, it works in these countries to implement the financial pillar of the Union's external cooperation and development policies by encouraging private sector development, infrastructure development, security of energy supply and environmental sustainability. In the wake of the 2014 Russian military intervention in Ukraine, the Council of the European Union instructed the EIB to suspend the signature of new financing operations in Russia. Strategy. Operating strategy, to finance viable capital projects which further EU objectives, to borrow on the capital markets to finance these projects. Lending strategy within the EU. Within the EU, the EIB has 6 priority objectives: cohesion and convergence, support for small and medium-sized enterprises, environmental sustainability, knowledge economy, development of trans-European networks of transport and energy, sustainable, competitive, and secure energy supply. Lending strategy outside the EU. Outside the EU, the EIB's priority objectives for lending activity are private sector development, financial sector development, infrastructure development, security of energy supply, environmental sustainability. EU presence. When making loans outside the EU, the bank has lending mandates based on EU external cooperation and development policies, which differ from region to region. Pre-accession candidate and potential candidate countries in the enlargement region. European neighborhood, Mediterranean neighborhood, Russia and Eastern neighbors, development Africa, Pacific and Caribbean, Republic of South Africa. Economic cooperation Asia and Latin America. Within pre-accession countries, activities support both the EU priority lending objectives and the objectives of the external mandates. Corporate policies, transport policy, energy policy, transparency policy, climate strategy, governance at the EIB, complaints mechanism policy, anti-fraud and anti-corruption policy, integrity policy and compliance charter, statement on environmental and social principles and standards, EIB whistleblowing policy, EIB policy towards weakly regulated, non-transparent and uncooperative jurisdictions. Governance. The EIB is governed by the Board of Governors, usually the finance ministers of the member states. The mandate is to authorize EIB activities outside the Union, form credit policy guidelines and approve the annual accounts. Board of Directors, 28 members. There are 18 alternates, meaning that some of these positions are shared by groups of states. The board also co-opts a maximum of 6 experts, who participate in the board meetings in an advisory capacity, without voting rights. The board has sole power to take decisions in respect of loans, guarantees and borrowings. They are responsible only to the bank. Management Committee, EIB President and 8 Vice Presidents. Audit Committee, 6 members appointed by the Board of Governors. The EIB addresses complaints internally and the bank can also be referred to the European Ombudsman if concerns about maladministration persist. Offices. The headquarters is situated at 100 Boulevard Konrad Adenauer in Kirchberg, Luxembourg. The building's first phase, now the West Building, was designed by British architect Sir Denis Lasdin and is one of his few works outside the UK. An extension, the East Building, was designed by Ingenhoven Architects, Düsseldorf, covered by a glass roof that spans the entire structure. The extension adds 72,500 meters of office space. The EIB has offices in the different EU countries, including Athens, Berlin, Brussels, Bucharest, Fort-de-France, Martinique, Helsinki, Lisbon, London, Madrid, Paris, Rome, Sofia, Warsaw, Copenhagen and Vienna. Outside of the EU, it has offices in Belgrade, Serbia, Kiev, Ukraine, Ankara, Turkey, Beijing, China, Cairo, Egypt, Dhaka, Senegal, Istanbul, Turkey, Nairobi, Kenya, Pretoria, South Africa, Rabat, Morocco, Sydney, Australia, and Tunis, Tunisia and Tbilisi, Georgia. In 2007, the EIB opened a regional office in Helsinki, located at the headquarters of the Nordic Investment Bank, with the aim of enhancing the bank's presence in the Baltic Sea region. Presidents. The EIB president is the head of the Management Committee, a 9-member executive body that is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the EIB. They are appointed by the EIB's Board of Governors, on a proposal from the Board of Directors, for a renewable 6-year term. The President is also the Chair of the Board of Directors. The current EIB President is Werner Hoyer, a German politician with a doctorate in economics. He became president in January 2012. Former presidents include Werner Hoyer, January 2012, Philippe Maystadt, March 2000, December 2011, Sir Brian Unwin, April 1993, December 1999, Ernst Günther Broder, August 1984, March 1993. Yves Laporte, September 1970, July 1984. Paride Formentini, June 1959, September 1970. Pietro Campilli, February 1958, May 1959. Shareholders. The shareholders of the EIB are the 28 member states of the EU, while each state's share in the EIB's capital is based on its economic weight within the European Union at the time of its accession. Shares of capital are following: active projects: Crossrail, United Kingdom; Kanpur Metro, India; Manchester Metrolink Phase 3, United Kingdom; Eurasia Tunnel, Turkey; Marmara Railway, Turkey. Controversial projects. There are a few projects financed or under the appraisal procedure by the EIB that have raised objections from local communities as well as international and national NGOs. Such projects include the M10 motorway in Russia, the Gazela Bridge in Serbia, the Raka Bridge between Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, the D1 motorway in the Slovakia, Sostanj power plant in Slovenia, the Bujagali hydroelectric power station in Uganda. The transparency policy of the EIB has been criticized by NGOs. In 2004, Article 19 issued a memorandum in which it accused the EIB of failing to meet international standards on openness. In 2010, the EIB updated its transparency policy. A 2011 report accused the EIB of a lending policy that failed its responsibility to further the EU goal of cutting carbon emissions. In 2014, 11 NGOs demanded the release of an EIB report into allegations of tax fraud by Glencore in Zambia. Following a recommendation of the European Ombudsman, the EIB released a summary which stated their investigation had been non-conclusive. The Ombudsman subsequently called this summary inadequate and accused the EIB of failing to meet its own transparency policy. Reports in 2010 and 2015 from a coalition of NGOs implicated the EIB in tax avoidance by lending to businesses which use tax havens.